Yeah, I hate that. I hate that when you get all of that. You're just sitting there and the machine is just going round and round and round and round. Yeah, and you're waiting for them. Yep, I got it. Okay, so welcome everybody to Talking Niagara. Bit of a delay this morning because Dave had a windy around the machine. Wait
Had a
for
hard time getting on. Yeah.
yeah. Wait for this to happen. We got you. That's the computer equivalent of the telephone message that says your call is important to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, bullshit, is it? It was important to us. You'd have another human answering it.
Yeah. Well, I've got a few stories about that. Hi, Chris. Metaphysical Mike. Hello. Well, I have a couple different stories. Well, the one thing you talked about, uh, the your call is important to us. Well, I had to phone the CRA, the Canadian Revenue Agency, because I wasn't getting my CERB, so I was wondering what the heck was going on. And it turns out that I messed up my income tax, and in my income tax, I forgot to enter on the line how much I paid in income tax. So they automatically went ahead and didn't check, and uh, I found out that they think I owe them over $5,000. So, so I said, "Wait a minute! I get no way do I owe you 5,000? I paid all that tax." And it turns out that I didn't enter it on the particular line, and because I didn't enter it into a certain line, that it looked to them as if I didn't pay the tax, even though all my slips automatically say that. So, but in their case, to their credit, they have like about an hour line before you can get to talk to a rep from the Canadian Revenue Agency, but they put you on hold and let you hang up, and then they phone you back.
Yeah.
So it took an hour, but at least it didn't have to stay on the line listening to your call. Is very important to us. We'll answer when we can.
Obviously, if you ring an organization and if you rang us and you got an automated message because unfortunately we were all on the phone, fine, that happens, right? It happens, but it's rare. Typically when people ring us, we answer the phone. If you've got a situation where that's happening all the time, hire somebody to answer the phone, right? And if you've got that, if you, even with the person answering the phone or specialist team answering the phone, if you're getting that regularly, hire another person. It's very, very simple. And I know the budget doesn't allow for it. Screw the budget, get it done, right? Because people need to speak with people. Let's get customer service back on the agenda.
Okay. Well, they did a pretty good job when I phoned them, and the first lady I talked to I had to mail out this form, and she transferred me to another, but she gave me the wrong address to mail out the form, and the next guy sent me the form, and when I looked at the form, I see the address I had to send it to, and all that to get it resolved. So, but they were very good. They were very nice. They were very efficient. So, I'm glad of that. Now, my other story. What happened to me 42 years ago on this date? I was in an airplane. I was on a jet. I was on a DC-10, I think it was, it was either DC-8 or DC-10, going from Paris to Tripoli via Malta.
Via
Malta. Okay. So we were about to land in Malta. And I had done this flight before. But we're flying along and everything's going fine, but there's not a whole lot of us on the plane. There's only us workers that were going to go out to the desert, most of us. And something happened. I had just finished pouring a beer in my glass. And and the guy beside me and the light came on for turbulence, right? Put on your seatbelt. So I put my seatbelt on. because I had this beer in my hand and I wasn't going to shake it out. And the guy beside me was a Texan, Howard Cormichael. And I said to him, I worked with him in the desert. I said, Howard, you better put your seatbelt on. You know, there's some turbulence coming up. And he says, hell, Dave, nothing but a little turbulence. It's not going to bother me. No. Well, guess what? Guess what? Well, we hit something. We hit a hailstorm. We hit hail. The hail the size of softballs. And we hit a hailstorm and it choked the engines. And I was sitting just off the edge of the wing, so I could see these big hailstones bouncing off the wing, and we decelerated really fast, like we just kind of like the brakes were being put on, right? And the beer in my hand took off out of my hand and went like a rope all the way up to the front of the plane, and I was sitting in the back. It was just went like that. Howard beside me, he got thrown out of his chair. He got tossed up. He did a somersault and a half, and then landed, like he went up around once and a half, and then ended up with his head on the seat in front, and his feet were just sticking up and doing one of these. And then we started to decelerate really fast. We started coming down, right? And then as we started coming down, and we're kind of on an angle. We're coming down like a little bit listed to the left and coming down fast, and then we could hear the engines start to kick in again. Whoa, 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 whoa. And they started coming in, but we knew, something had happened pretty bad. And then we kept flying, and we were flying at quite a lower altitude than we normally would. And
you're no longer at 35,000 feet. You're at 15.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, oh boy, what's going on here? Are we going to be can we even land on Malta? Because if you look at Malta from the sky, you don't think, no way you're going to be able to land on that postage stamp, but you are. It lives so hard.
Well, I had the same with Cyprus. Yeah, I had the same with Cyprus.
Well, we kept going.
Then the plane rotates around the whole of Cyprus in order to land on Cyprus. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. So obviously we knew something was going on, and because we'd been bounced around pretty badly there, and like I said, Howard was getting himself out of the seat in front, and we had one of our guys had never flown before, and he was afraid of flying, so he'd flown from Toronto to Paris, and he thought he was good, and he gets on the UTA thing, and guess where he was when this all happened? He was in the washroom, and we heard this, and everybody was kind of talking and wonder what the heck's going to happen. And just as we started to sort of stop talking, we could hear a click, and the washroom door opened, and this guy comes out, and he got beat up pretty good. He was a salt shaker he was like a salt shaker in the washroom. He got bounced around in there. He comes out. His eyes are this big, right? His eyes are this big. He didn't say a thing. He looked just forward. He walked holding seat after seat after seat like this.
Oh, no.
Walked up to his seat like a robot, moved over, sat down, put a seatbelt on, and just sat there like this and didn't say anything. Now, we knew something was up because the steward and the stewardess were just sort of almost panicking. And so finally we started coming down, and I saw from where I was, I could see all the emergency. We skipped Malta, and all these emergency emergency vehicles were running onto the land to the airstrip, and I thought, oh boy, that's for us. So we started coming down, and we landed, and when we landed, they opened up the plane for us to get out. And the stewardess, I never saw a person green in my life. She had opened the door, but she was leaning against the fuselage, not saying goodbye or anything like they do. And she was just leaning against there, and her face was green, and her eyes were open and just staring off into space as well. So we got off the plane, and we looked at the plane, and it was destroyed. the nose cone had been ripped right off. There was no nose cone and just a hole there with wires and pipes. And all the leading edges of the wings were all smashed in. The engines were all banged up.
And of course, this was in a day and age that was before the smart cell phone, where you could have taken 1,000 pictures. You'd have been stood there for the next half an hour taking pictures, wouldn't you?
No, it was forbidden to take any pictures in the Libyan airport. So even the guys with cameras couldn't take pictures. So we looked at it, and a couple of guys got sick to their stomach because they realized we were inches away from just falling out of the sky. When we finally looked at the plane and saw how much damage was done to it, we could, at that point, seriously understand how close we came to just falling out of the sky, because it was bad. And the pilots had to land it blind, because the windshields, although they held up and didn't break through, they were all broken in a way that they couldn't see out of them. It was like a spider webs all over it.
Yeah, instrument landing.
Yeah, so they landed it blind, and what a mess that plane was. And I had brought some hockey sticks with plastic. I brought a bunch of hockey sticks so we could play on a tennis court we had out in the desert. So I brought hockey sticks with plastic blades on them so we could play road hockey kind of. And I just and I saw the door for the baggage, it was opened. And I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if we lost our hockey sticks. And a guy just turned on me and he said, "Fuck the hockey sticks," like that.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well,
no, that ain't over. Like I was there at that time. I was there. I was in Libya for 3.5 months there, because I went out to the desert and did my thing in the desert, and then I went to Benghazi and worked there for about a couple of months. And then so I was in Libya at that time for over 3 months, and then when I was leaving Libya to go back out for my field break, I went through Tripoli, and it was right there was the plane. It hadn't moved, and it was still being repaired. It had a brand new nose cone. It had new engines and new metal on the wings, especially the leading edges of the wings.
I would have thought that it would have ended up as being the fire test plane that is on every airport.
No, they fixed it. They just had to put everything brand new on it, and it hadn't been painted yet, so I could see how many pieces they had to replace. And well, it was lots of them, except for most of the long tube was okay, but part of it was kicked in, but the long fuselage, but all the wings and the engines and the nose cone and all that were all new metal, and you could see the new metal compared to that, which was painted white, so I could see the extent of the damage. And it still hadn't been fixed 3.5 months later. Yeah. And UTA then had to hire a plane, a TriStar. Remember those TriStars? They were kind of like a little a medium range aircraft that were kind of the workhorse of the day back then. So I had to get on a Euro something TriStar instead of the UTA flight, because they had to borrow one from somewhere so I could get out. But let me tell you, we had people saying, "Oh, I'll never get on a DC-8 again," and all that. And then we kind of figured, no, it was a DC-10. I says, "Oh no, I'll get on a DC-10 any day. If it survived that, it would survive anything."
Yeah, absolutely. If it survived that, essentially when that storm hit, 9 times out of 10 you'd have been dead.
Yeah, hailstorms do quite a bit of damage. Since that time, I've looked up a few of them, and I've seen pictures of planes that gone through hailstorms and how much damage is done. But none of them I saw ever had as much damage as our DC-10 UTA Paris to Libya, or Paris to Tripoli, in October 25th, 1982, 42
you
years
ended
ago.
up you ended up skipping Malta and you landed in Tripoli.
Yeah, they went straight to Tripoli. They missed the Malta. Well, they couldn't. They had to go to a bigger airport, obviously. If they you know what I mean by Malta
because
being
they
so
needed
small.
you needed that emergency support, and you
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have gotten that in Malta. So hey, better land you in Tripoli, and even if you had to take some people, even if the airline had to take people back to Malta afterwards.
Yeah, it was a mess. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Good old Howard. I still remember.
Well, you know, the situation there, that really shows you know who's the hero there is actually the pilot who, you know, the pilots who undoubtedly, when this all hit, did everything according to the policies and procedures that had been laid out to them hundreds of times before.
Yes, indeed. It was anyway, the fact that they landed it, they landed it blind, and they went up right up to the like at first we didn't think when the doors opened for the airplane, the emergency people ran into it, like the medics and the first aid people or the ambulance people ran in to see if everyone was okay. That's the first. I forgot that part of it. So when they ran in looking for injured people, I thought, oh, well, this was a little bit more serious than we thought, you know, because after it started going again, we kind of calmed down. But then when we got outside and looked at the plane, I said, oh.
Holy shit, yes.
And the guys that were almost sick were the guys with family back home. At that time, I didn't have any kids or a wife or anything. But the guys that had wife and kids, they were sick to their stomach.
Yeah, Mike makes the point. If you were on a Boeing, you would not be here, Dave.
Yes, I would, because if I go on Boeing, I'm going to buy a parachute. If one of those doors fly open, I'm going to be able to parachute down. It'd be quite a ride, wouldn't it? From 35,000 feet. Ah! Imagine if you got pulled out of a plane at 35,000 feet. You'd have lots of time to figure, you know what? I'm going to be squashed like a little bug, you know, and I got all this time to think about it. You know, you got about 30 seconds or something to think, oh no.
Yeah.
Maybe even more, a minute up from way up there.
Yeah. All right. Let's calm down and let's get on with the business of the day. Okay. So Toronto has rigid zoning laws that one company is saying is standing in the way of potential housing units. And what they're basically saying here is that Toronto has this Toronto office replacement bylaw stating that they can only, if you've got office space, you can only replace it with office space. And this impacts us in a number of ways, because if you demolish an office building, it has to be replaced by an office building, can't be replaced by residential buildings. But it also means that the bylaw is also stopping the conversion of former office space to housing space. Now, I think there's other issues relating to the conversion of former office space to housing space, but that's another matter entirely. But Scott Fiegler, who's National Research Director at JLL Canada, is saying that it's replacing that bylaw, scrapping the bylaw essentially, is increasingly urgent to those who are dealing with making homes in Toronto. Now, I would have thought the other thing here would happen is that the projects that were expected to be completed around about 2023 would have actually been would have broken ground in 2022 and 2023 when interest rates began to rise. And I would suspect that actually that may have a greater impact upon housing supply than would that conversion factor.
Oh, this is an article that goes back a couple of days, eh?
Yeah, it was. It was one that we didn't get to a couple of days ago. All right. And he's saying that 73 office buildings in the city where developers are seeking permission to redevelop into mixed-use projects, including residential units, are being held up all because of this bylaw.
Well, yeah, obviously we need the housing. We need it very, very bad. And so it makes sense. But on the other hand, you lose once you start messing with the bylaws, then you miss. Then you start losing office space capabilities, and we'll see this in another article if we get to it today. You're going to start to lose your office space capabilities, and then what you'll find is you may then have the opposite problem. You don't have enough office space.
Yeah,
because
and that's why this bylaw. Yeah, and that's why Toronto introduced that bylaw.
Yeah. So what do you do with this land now? Now the ramifications of too much immigration. It just as we found out yesterday, the government's flip flop on their immigration. They're reducing immigration all across the board now. They flip flop completely on it, and everything seems to go back to that because just about everything, the houses we need, the zoning the rigid zoning rules that Toronto has to be loosened up. Why? Everything boils down to because we don't have enough places for people to stay. We don't have enough houses. Our houses are too expensive. Our apartments are too expensive. Everything. So the solution to that is increase supply. You can't increase supply because of old zoning that protected the status quo when we had smaller amounts of immigration and we had more planning involved. So the ramifications of the immigration policy that was not well thought out is having ripple effects everywhere. It's even affecting Toronto's rigid zoning rules. So that I don't know.
Yeah, but you see, again, these bylaws are put into place often to protect important aspects about, because downtown, the thinking was that downtown Toronto, survives on its office space, and the concern that I have is conversion of office space to residential space may end up being if we do remove the bylaw, it may well end up being that we end up with a situation whereby we then have an overpopulation of people in the area in 10, 15 years time, and not enough office space means that no more corporations can move into downtown Toronto, and that might injure future work environment. Just because today people have decided, companies have decided that they're going to make use of remote working doesn't mean to say that's the future.
Who cares about downtown Hogtown? Heck with downtown Hogtown. Who's going to be able to live there anyway? It's only going to be hogs in Hogtown, people with lots of money. Heck with Hogtown. Look, downtown Hogtown can go to the devil. We need the buildings here, right? We need them right here in Niagara Falls, and the corporations can come here.
Well, yeah, that as well. They could come here. Yeah, we would welcome them because, in fact, actually, one of the questions that has been looking is local industry here in Toronto, local industry here in Niagara, really has been basically saying that it needs the same attention that tourism has got.
I propose that we take the CN Tower out of downtown Hogtown and bring it here to Marineland. That's what I propose.
What, brick by brick? Brick by brick.
Yeah. So I think probably the problem, if you take the office space and turn it into residential, you're that's actually a pretty good idea in the long run, though. What you want to do, the big American cities all died because they had urban blight, which is called urban blight, which when the people lived inside the city and then they moved out to the suburbs, that left the city empty at night, basically. And those old neighborhoods then were filled up and got sold off cheap. And then you got your slums and your low income neighborhoods, and so you got a lot of crime.
Yeah.
So the core of the U.S. cities were dying, and we see how that happened huge in Detroit, where actually the inside of the city was almost evacuated for a time.
Yeah.
So to encourage people to live downtown, actually people in the downtown space, which Toronto has done by and large up until now. So I celebrate anything that brings people back into the downtown core and lives downtown, because then you don't get that urban blight. You can avoid crime zones and all that other things. However, as you said, now what are you going to do when you need office space? And of course, the reasoning is you need less and less because more and more people can work at home. My son rarely goes to the place he works. He works entirely from home. Entirely, he's a computer programmer.
For some industries like IT, that's possible and has been done for tens of years. Let's put it that way. I've done home working. I've worked at home when I was in the IT industry, dating back to the 90s, right? But even there, when you work at home, you still need to be in the office once in a while.
Yeah, and that's true. But you don't have to have as much of a.
No, you don't.
Downtown Hogtown doesn't need to have as many office buildings right now. But the fact of the matter is that if you need right now, there's an urgent demand for housing. Urgent.
Yeah.
It's rather sudden because it didn't exist in 10 years ago. It exists now, huge. And as a matter of fact, It's been even more so the last five or 6 years. So I think probably I can see what's going to happen. They're going to amend that bylaw and get things done, because the big push from the Ontario and federal government is to get more places for people to live.
Yeah, and of course the other issue that I think you were referring to as well is, first of all, those local group here saying that our industry deserves the same attention as tourism. Other industries deserve the same attention as tourism and hospitality. But then,
article,
yeah.
New article.
In addition, there's another one where it's saying that basically a new vacant building registry bylaw will help Niagara Falls deal with the 114 empty structures that they've got. I think it's more than 114. When
144. 144 they know of.
Well, it says 114 in the headline, but still, yeah, okay.
That's wrong. The headline's wrong. I know more than they do.
Well, I would say I know that when I was doing my election, and that was one of the things that I was standing on for the municipal election, was let's get a vacant building registry and let's do something about these empty structures. And I counted. I have to say, I gave up counting at about 150.
Well, there is at least 144 they know of, and the problem with the vacant buildings is that there's nobody living in them. So if something happens, like a fire or something like that, it takes a while before somebody notices it. And then the emergency vehicles have to go out there, the fire department and so on. And it's costly. It's costly and these things are not maintained quite often. They don't have smoke alarms or other things in them. So they're going to make a registry. They're going to punish, basically, or make, actually not really punish, but make vacant people who own vacant properties, make them pay. One big vacant property is right there, and the old police station. It's a beautiful old building that was designed by the same guy who built Toronto City Hall. That old magnificent, or no, was it Queen? It was Queen's Park, and they got this beautiful old building built around 1880, and it's been vacant since 1979, when they tried to burn it down but couldn't do it. They sent some arsons in there, and it didn't work. They burned off the roof, though, which is very sad because it had shell roof. It was a beautiful shell roof. Anyway, there you have a building that is being empty since 1979.
Yeah. And then another one that I can show is that, well, it's now it's on the corner of Thoroldstone and Victoria Avenue. It used to be, actually, you could say it was on the corner of Bridge and Victoria Avenue. It's that old factory that was there. That's been closed ever since I've been in Niagara. And
that's the old Kimberly Clark. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
A friend of mine's father died in there when the floor collapsed. He worked there, and that was back in the early 80s, I think it was. The plant had decided to store nickel, I think it was nickel pellets in there, in space they had to make some extra money, but they didn't do their due diligence. It was too much weight for the floor. The floor collapsed and killed two guys underneath, including my brother's friend's father.
Okay, that's pretty bad. But that's another one of these empty spaces that is still around, that, you know, we perhaps need to plan and do something with that one.
Well, there's a building with a really good shell to it. You know what I mean? And they could turn that into apartments. Or condos.
They could easily turn that into apartments.
Yeah, you've got a building that was built for industrial purposes, you know, so that the skeleton of it's going to be really solid.
Absolutely, it is.
Fix that floor that crashed through, and
but I'm sure that's been
the whole thing for condos or apartments or something like that. There's a building already there.
Yeah, but I'm sure that floor that crashed through was that actually the reason the building closed?
Yeah.
It was. Okay. So that other than that floor that crashed through, then it's a perfectly, functional building.
My doctor was the coroner on call there, and he showed up because they could see that all but two guys hadn't got out of the building, and I remember the coroner being who's my doctor, saying, don't anyone go in there until you're positive that you can go in there safely. So he was advising the fire department, take caution, go in slowly. By this time, by the look of things, you're not going to be able to save anyone. So just go in there and be very careful. And he was right. There was two guys there, and they were killed. But he was wise in telling the firefighters to take their time to make sure that they were safe as they went in to retrieve whoever was left.
Well, it's a very dangerous situation. Yeah. Well, that's a a sad history at the end of that building. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
And that's
anyway, so there's a building that could be repurposed, or get the wrecking ball out, one of the two, and just get rid of some of them or repurpose some of them.
I would prefer to see that repurposed, because it's a notwithstanding the history you've just given us, it's a building that actually has a lot of potential, I think.
Yeah, every time I pass by it, I wonder why it's still there. I mean, that's been there for over 40 years, I think, empty.
Yeah. As I say, it's been here ever since I've lived in
the old police station from 1979.
Yeah.
You know, it's going on.
And there's 2 of them, and
5 years.
this is only, and there's 140 other ones. You know, at least, and as
Well,
how
according to they misquoted it in the paper there. In the city council meeting, it's 144.
Yeah. Okay. No. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I'm hoping the city does something about that. All right, moving on. The Auditor General, just to cover this very briefly, the Auditor General is now to investigate all 118 contracts totaling 107 million in relation to GC Strategies and its predecessors. And they are looking into, they're going to do a full audit of this company. This is the company that was given the ArriveCan app to build.
It was awarded 118 contracts totaling $107 million since 2011.
Yeah.
And it right off the beginning, right from the beginning, we can see that the Arrive scam is not the only scam that happened.
Yeah.
That this outfit was the go-to outfit for the government, and they just scammed the government right, left, and center.
Yeah.
Some of the like last night I was watching or listening to the news, and they were talking about going to investigate some of these places, and they would go to a building that where the address of the building was supposed to be, but there's nothing really there. It's only a building that takes the mail. There's nobody in there, you know.
But again, there's too many of these companies out there, to be quite honest, Dave. We've been suing a company. We sued a company, and we sent it, the server round to their head office, and it's empty. You know,
yeah.
2nd floor of this building, or 8th floor of this building, sorry, and it's empty. It's completely empty. You know,
well, that's the story. Story I got on the news. Yeah.
Yeah, and you need CSIS type level security to even get into the building, you know?
Yeah, so somebody has been scamming the government there. This is very much like incredible corruption. We don't really think of corruption in Canada so much, but this is a very clear case of corruption. And whoever, and the Auditor General is trying to follow all the different threads. And one of the reasons why she has trouble doing that is because the record keeping was so unprofessional. So it's hard to trace back where all the money was being abused, where the money went to. And we know this app wouldn't cost more than the highest figure I've ever heard for this particular app is $150,000. And that's supposed to be a generous estimate. And yet we paid $60 million for it. In fact, the government, the auditor, what? Go ahead.
I know people who could do it for 50.
Well, you know what? So this is where is the oversight of the government? We said this. We said this yesterday. The government cannot govern. It cannot do the business of the government. It may have great ideas, but it can't even solicit a company to do a simple piece of software without paying hundreds of times more than it costs to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And we found this too with the ST strategies.
You know, this is, to be quite honest, like a 3-person 4-week job. That's it. 3 people, 4 weeks. You're done.
There's 2 different reasons why this bothers me. Number one, how did this ever happen in the first place? They go straight back to their go-to contractor who evidently had been ripping them off since 2011. So in 2020, they come up with the ArriveCan thing, or 2021 or whatever it was. So this company had been ripping them off for already 10 years. And they give them the sweet contract and don't even have any kind of oversight over it. How is it that nobody in the government just understands that you don't pay $55 million for a $100,000 app?
Because
how is it that nobody in there knows
the value? They don't understand the value of these things, you know?
Well, they They have to. They're supposed to govern. I
Yeah,
mean,
I know.
if I need a new computer for my business, let's say I got a business and I need a new computer for it, like say a new laptop, and somebody comes in and says, here's your new laptop. It cost you $1 million.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
kind of what's happening here.
yeah. That's
Imagine
exactly what's
what else
happening
is the
here.
government paying for? Is the
Yeah,
government paying $1 million for every laptop they use in there? Are they getting ripped off there too?
yeah, yeah.
And we do
Exactly.
know they were getting
Fair
ripped off.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair questions, and part of the blame has got to sit at the government and government oversight.
Where is that oversight?
Yeah,
That's my whole point.
yeah,
The basic ordinary governing, the basic ordinary operating of the government is done extraordinarily poorly by the liberals. As we've just as we will talk about later too, is that immigration thing. Of course, now they're getting really, really flustered and flip-flopping on their immigration policies in a big way because they did not plan it. They said, oh, what a good idea. We're going to bring all these people in. We're going to bring all these students in. Great, great. We're going to be multicultural. Everything's wonderful. And anybody complained about that, they were called racist before. And now the government's flip-flopping and going and doing what the conservatives have been telling them to do the whole time. They messed up the immigration policy in a big way.
yeah.
This means
It wasn't.
this means that they did not think it out. They did not look at the business, the dollars and cents, the bones of the problem.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
didn't think it through.
Yeah. Okay. Just as another aside, by the way, I love these sort of things. This guy, MR Hydro, is creating this new hydrogen fuel cell car. It can apparently run for 1,500 kilometers on a set of fuel on a fuel cell, and can be and those fuel cells can be replaced in like 10 seconds.
Well, just to go back to the other article for a minute, well, the Green Slush Fund, which is the STDC, which is the strategic technology thing that they have. It was another huge corrupt thing that the government somehow didn't see. That was a good idea to innovate and get companies more green tech, and then it just ran away from them, and it cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and it was going into the pockets of liberal insiders. The idea was great. It was a fabulous idea, but they couldn't do it. It's like saying, guess what? Let's fix this car, but you don't have a mechanic, right? We're going to fix this car. Here's some money to fix it. And you hand it to somebody that doesn't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
It happened to be a pal of yours too. How about that? Anyway, let's go to the hydrogen car. Sorry about that.
It was
side.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, the hydrogen car. This is by MR Hydro, and they're basically bringing out what they're talking about. The future is here already. So they've created this time. They've generated a hydrogen fuel cell car, and the idea is that it can actually run for 1,500 kilometers on easily. Basically, it comes on these like canisters that are inserted into the car. So hydrogen canisters that are basically inserted into the car. They're installed in seconds. So when you come to a fueling station, it's pop, 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 pop. And, you've got another 1,500 kilometers to go.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
It does.
Sounds like this, but I remember this technology going back to the 1980s. And I remember everyone saying, pretty soon we're going to have hydrogen cars back in 1980s. We didn't have them, did we?
No.
What is the problem with hydrogen?
Well, there are hydrogen fuel cell buses, and they've been operating for quite some time in many cities around Europe.
Well, it talks about the hydrogen buses, most of which are in China, majority of which are in China. And that's good because big vehicles need kind of a lot of power, like electric, say, an electric dump truck probably wouldn't work that well. You would need a fuel source for that because you need a lot of power. So to have a hydrogen fuel for that kind of power would be good. But the problem with hydrogen is, how do you make it? You need vast amounts of, like, the way they make it now is to strip the hydrogen out of natural gas, which doesn't make it very clean. It's not a clean hydrogen. So you get hydrogen and you work the hydrogen, but what you've done is, with the natural gas, you've released it just as much carbon into the atmosphere as you would have anyway.
And that's part of the new cleaner, the hydrogen generated from water technique that they've got, that they're using around at the power station here.
Yeah, they've put up an experimental thing here, but the real problem is it takes a vast amount of energy to make hydrogen out of water. Right? Because you have to separate the molecule. You get H2O molecule there, and you have to separate. You have to separate the oxygen from the hydrogen. And it can be done, but it takes a vast amount of energy.
Yeah.
Big problem with hydrogen, if we had ample supplies of it, we'd be on hydrogen cars long ago. But we don't. We have ample supply of fossil fuels. That's what we have. So in order to switch the industry over to using hydrogen cars, and I can see them coming onto the market, is the incredible amount of power it takes to generate enough power to separate oxygen from hydrogen. And that does the same, that gives you the same problem as a fuel car does, because most of the places in the States, for instance, would have to use a lot of carbon fuel to generate power, electrical power, to extract the hydrogen from the water. You may not get any real gains from that. The whole idea of having a hydrogen car really is to get a cleaner burning fuel, which is true. The exhaust is only water, but and it is a very good fuel. It's very, very volatile. It's very explosive. So you get a lot of energy out of it, a lot of BTU basically out of every cubic foot of hydrogen, or however they
hydrogen has a higher energy storage density than batteries do. So, you know, for every square foot of hydrogen fuel cell, you get more power out of it than you do, you know, for the same square footage of battery power.
Yeah, I don't doubt that one bit, because hydrogen is very volatile.
Yeah,
extremely explosive, as you see the Hindenburg.
And of course, the other question,
humanity.
The other question about this is the hydrogen fuel cell cars are also supposed to be as quiet as the electric car.
Oh yeah. I'm not so sure,
because their combustion works in a different way than it does for the gas engine.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they could make a turbine system out of the hydrogen fuel. I don't know. At one time, they had a turbine.
I'm not entirely sure how it works, but that's basically what they're saying. Anyway, yeah.
Well, it's a good idea. It's a very good idea, but they have that main hitch. Where are they going to get the hydrogen? There's hydrogen everywhere. It's probably the most common substance in the world, but it is combined with other things. Most of our hydrogen is locked up in water,
in the sea.
You can get as much hydrogen as you want out of water, but you have to separate it, and that takes energy. And how are you going to do that?
Yeah,
and that is the biggest rub with hydrogen cars, because hydrogen cars have been on them. Like in the 1980s, when I read about or thought about hydrogen cars, I thought they'd be there within 10 or 15 years. And then in the 90s, they talked about it again. And I said, oh, well, any day now. And then in the 2000s, they talked about it. And I says, well, they're kind of late, because they've been talking about it already for 20 years. And then 10 years ago, I was thinking, where are they? They got to be coming out. And now they're saying they're coming out again. Is this a false flag? Is it?
Well, but they've been using them for buses for the last 30 years. You
So
know,
why haven't they translated that into
I don't
car?
know. I don't know. I really don't know. As I said,
We don't have any. We don't have any hydrogen buses here, do we?
Well, the first
Why
hydrogen
don't we have any
fuel cell
hydrogen buses here?
Yeah, the first hydrogen fuel cell buses I saw were in Europe, and I've seen some in London, not all, you know, but again, you know, I've seen some in London and not very many in the past, because
Yeah, every
they
once
made
in a while
a
you'll
big
see
play
it.
about this is a hydrogen fuel cell bus.
Yeah, every once in a while you'll see that advertising, but you don't have many, do you? We don't have any here in Niagara Falls. I've never
No,
seen one in Toronto. I've
no.
been around Europe and I've never seen too many of them at all, if I can even remember seeing one of them. So why is that the case? You said they've been running for 30 years. Well, where are they? How come they're not ubiquitous? The reason?
Yeah, I don't know.
The reason?
Yeah.
Fuel. Where are you going to get the fuel?
Yeah. Yeah. The fuel issue is the biggest challenge there. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Okay. Okay. So, for some reason, Ontario is desperately short of home care supplies, and what the meaning for here is for long-term care homes, right?
Yeah, and for people who do their own self medication or self health care,
Yeah.
with a PSD or something like that. Now, we have been fond of talking about the federal government and how they mismanage everything. Well, the Ontario government could not be outdone. They have to mismanage something too. They feel jealous. Evidently, when I read this, it seems that the Ontario government felt that it had to step up into the incompetence level of governing, and they have changed their system of distributing needed healthcare supplies, medical supplies in the province. So there's been a dearth of it. They've changed the system where they got healthcare supplies out to people who, like in one particular case here, talked about a guy who has lung cancer, and he's staying at home, and he has somebody come along, and they need a pump or something like that to get the fluid out of his lungs, and blah blah blah, and a few other things. Well, he couldn't get a pump. Gauze is gone. I can tell you there were in the retirement homes there are times when they can't get briefs for incontinence, for old people who have accidents at night or something like that. They have to wear these briefs, and there were they weren't available. People had to buy their own and take them in because the government supplies were just not available. So they changed the system. And like I said, they could not be outdone in incompetence with the federal government. So they incompetized their healthcare distribution. So this is a faux pas by the provincial government. This is something that they didn't think out well enough. And as a matter of fact, in the article, one of the persons talking about there, it says, why isn't it they didn't think this out before they did it?
Yeah.
If they had thought it out before they did it, they could have sort of pinched off any of these inadequacies that came up.
Oh, yeah.
But they didn't. They just enrolled a system, and even the in-betweeners who are the suppliers and then take that supplies locally, some of them are even pulling out of the program because they don't like how it's run. And when they do that, then that makes these medical supplies even tougher to find for people.
Well,
some of these things are supposed to be delivered within 4 hours. And in one important piece of medical equipment talked about in the article, they had to wait 48 hours for it. When you need it within 4 hours, it's important.
Well, right? and part of the challenge here is that the company responsible for delivering is expected to manage a massive area and they're not capable of managing such a massive area. So that's why the delays.
Yeah. Well,
somebody didn't think out the contracts. What they should have done was gone to local companies that could deliver. Like an Amazon situation, you need to set up lots of depots around the province in order to supply this stuff and have local companies deliver it all.
I like the title of the article. It says behind the scenes of how Ontario ended up desperately short of home care supplies. And a quote by the Hamilton lung cancer patient was, "It's chaos."
Yeah.
So the Ontario Health Minister, Sylvia Jones, said during the question period Monday that the supply shortages are unacceptable. Well, yeah. Well, thanks for making them that way. That's like Mark Miller saying, who's the immigration guy? Well, the amounts of immigration are unacceptable. We have to fix it. Well, why'd you let it get that bad? And this is the same thing, right? Why'd you let it get that bad? It's unacceptable. Yes, health minister, that's right. Well, why did you let it get that bad?
Who's the person responsible for doing it? Oh, that's you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is it. To quote here, the 59-year-old Hamilton kindergarten teacher requires home care equipment that has been scarce supply across Ontario since the province, and here's the words, suddenly implemented major changes on September 24th to what provisions are available and how they get provided. That thing is sudden. You don't do stuff like that suddenly. You implement it slowly and you take care of all the glitches as you go. But to just switch around and this is the way we're going to do it now, that doesn't work. I don't understand that. Like, can't you just have common sense people like an accountant or an engineer or some kind of manager come in and say, this is the way we're going to do it. This is how we're going to blend it in. This, instead of suddenly make the changes and throw everybody off. And then all of a sudden the province-wide changes cause a dearth of home care medical supplies. What the heck's going on?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You'd think Doug Ford, being a businessman, he would have known something like that, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Anything else we need to cover today?
No, but I'm just very glad that we had something to complain about the Ontario government, because I was kind of like the Canadian government
just to show that we're equal to show that we're equal opportunity diggers, right?
Yeah, and there might be some corruption involved in this too, but yeah, I do appreciate the federal government for giving us endless things to complain about them. But you know what? It was getting a bit old, so now we have the provincial government to complain about. So I'm much more happier now.
Okay, we seem to have. Okay, so okay, see you then, Chris. Have a good weekend. Yep. All right. Any final thoughts for the day, Dave?
Peace.
Peace. Yeah, of course. Peace is something we actually crave, I think, more than ever before, ever now. All right.
I'm telling you, I shed a tear every day. I'm sick to my stomach when I think what's going on in Gaza and Lebanon and Ukraine. I'm sick to my stomach. It's just madness. Somebody's just got to, one last thing though. There's an article here we didn't talk about, but I'll just put it in quickly. Guess what's happening? Iran and Saudi Arabia are having war games off the coast of Oman, have had, and might have war games in the Red Sea. What's going on? Iran, who is supposed to be the big bad enemy, and Saudi Arabia is supposed to be our pal, they are engaged in war games to make sure that their respective navies are in good shape in case of a war. What the heck's going on?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That was one we didn't get to.
But I'm saying peace. peace. It cannot be that far off. And I'm seriously, it is. We will never ever be forgiven for this if we don't bring peace to that Middle East thing, particularly Gaza. Anyway, I'll have to cry the whole weekend, but let's hope that something's going to happen.
All right. Bye.